Sir, is this renewed momentum here to stay?
I think the momentum is one of those things we have to cheer on, but looking underneath it, there are some real issues. I talk in my book about something called relevant inflation. We've been having moderate inflation for the past few years, but the relevant inflation as it relates to middle-class well-being, whether it's housing, health care, college tuition costs, those have all been going up at very spiky rates in the face of flatlining wages. And that pressure is something we have to mind. And a recent excitement of the May performance in consumer spending, great news, but I think there's still plenty of cause for concern.
That cause for concern, is it because of stagnant wages? Is that what's holding the American consumer back?
Well, unfortunately, we can't pay raise our way out of this one. What's basically going on, we have right now 4 million high-skilled jobs that are available and open and ready to be filled in this country, and we can't fill them.
Why not?
Because we have a skills gap. And one of the things we have to do is move heaven and earth to create better jobs. You know, the job report comes out with such frequency, but it leaves out the most important characteristic, which is the market value of that job. And that would be like the stock exchange say, we traded 1 billion shares today, but they didn't say where the market went up or down. So we're creating a lot of jobs, but they're low-wage, entry-level jobs. Those lack the multiplier effect that you love to see in a new job, where you hire me, and as a result of your hiring me, suddenly you need to hire a couple of other people to support me.
Mr. Kiernan, does that multiplier effect also involve an increase in the minimum wage, a living wage? We see the city of Los Angeles taking steps toward that end, the city of Seattle. Would that help solve the problem,
well,
or at least would it be a temporary adjustment?
Sure. We've raised the minimum wage 7 times since Ronald Reagan, and let's put it in a context, because sometimes that helps. There are about 145 million people working in America today. Of that 145 million, about 3 million are working at or below the minimum wage. So is it something that's helpful? Yes, your answer is that it's helpful. Is it necessary? Yes, it's necessary. Is it sufficient? Nowhere near sufficient.
What about
2% of the overall.
What about those who say it's a job killer?
I think that it is very threatening to one particular group that we should be highly concerned about, and that's who I call NEETs. Imagine everyone in the city of Los Angeles, and then pile on top of it everybody in the city of Philadelphia. That's how many young people between the ages of 16 and 25 are NEETs, not in employment, education, or training right now. Can you imagine anything more daunting than being 22 years old and having no hope and no options?
Sir, in your book, American Mojo, Lost and Found, you note 20th century remedies are being used to deal with 21st century problems. I'm reminded of what President Obama said about opening up relations with Cuba. We've been trying it for 50 years. It's not working. Let's try something different. Is that what you are seeing here? Why is that old paradigm still being used today?
We have to think about it differently. I think you're spot on. Give you an example. One area that we've been slow to go on is international trade. Yet outside our borders is 80% of the world's purchasing power, 90% of the world's economic growth, and 95% of the world's consumers. Our market is not enough to sustain the needs of our middle class. We profit best by serving this growing middle class outside the United States.
Sir, I was going to say, how troubling do you find it when the conversation steers towards the middle class? We tend to make it a domestic issue. What would a resurgent global middle class mean?
Well, I think one of the things you're hitting on that's very important, Mark, is that if you look out in the next 10 years, the OECD says there will be 1 billion more members of the world's middle class, 5 times the amount of people that are in the middle class in the United States. Who better than America knows how to serve the wants and the needs with products and services than the USA? Our future, the strength of our middle class, is inextricably linked to feeding that global middle class that you're talking about. That's the solution for us.
Sir, last minute. There's a gender issue at play here, too. We're seeing lots of women graduate from college. They're going out armed with degrees. They are venture capitalists. They are entrepreneurs. They're starting their own businesses. How will a resurgent middle class that is being lifted by females, how will that help change the dynamic?
Well, I think in a very real way, if you look at how women are behaving, every minute of every day in this country, a woman starts a business, much faster rate than men. Now, it turns out that most venture capital, about 70%, goes to men and their companies. But if you look at how women are preparing themselves, you're right. There are millions more women in college than men today. About half of all graduate programs, women. And so I think if you're going to look for one of the real flex factors in rebuilding the middle class, women are going to be the point of the spear.